You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 19.
I got to take that experience and tell that to people. You know, these kids that are going through the same types of peer pressures and everything that I went through. And them realizing there is something outside of this crime-infested, drug-infested city that I could benefit from. So doing that, talk to them, and they join the Army. They ship off to basic training. They come back and they say, Sergeant Milbrook, thank you so much. That's right there. That's why I love doing what I do.
Welcome to Change Your POV Podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Well, hello everyone, this is your host Eddie Lazary, and I've got to tell you I'm so excited for this episode. It's a lot different than previous episodes in terms of the format. Usually on Fridays, Bennett and I have our weekly banters, but this Friday and next Friday, so that's episode 19 and episode 21, I'm bringing to you a special episode with a good friend and prior soldier of mine. He's active duty Army, Sergeant First Class Roy Milbrook. He is an active duty recruiter, a very successful one at that, and he and I have a chance to catch up after a long time of not being able to have a chance to really catch up with one another. And it's special, one, because he's just got a special place in my heart. He was my gunner when we were deployed together in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 2 in Baghdad, March 04 to March 05. And anytime you experience something like that with somebody that closely, you know, there's just a special bond that comes between a truck, right? I was the truck commander. He was my gunner, and then our driver was Herbst, who you heard on an earlier episode. I interviewed Luke Herbst in episode 2. So another reason this is such a special episode is because you get it's not really an interview that I do with Roy, but it's more of kind of a discussion that he and I had about his experience as a recruiter, but also kind of some of the direction that I see for Change Your POV, for the blog and for the podcast, and a different demographic or an additional demographic of listeners that I'm hoping to reach someday. So this discussion that Roy and I have tells a lot, or it shows you kind of a behind the scenes look at a strategy that he and I are discussing about how we can create something that he could use at his recruitment center and that I could use on my podcast, and kind of help each other out, building some great content, some evergreen content, and something useful for listeners years and years to come. So if you're confused about what I'm talking about, then that's okay. You'll have an opportunity to listen in and understand very quickly exactly kind of the concept and the idea behind it. So we definitely do cover 2 episodes, compact, full of great stuff. There's some funny stories in here. There's some stories that he tells me that I didn't know about him. There's some stories that I tell him that he didn't know about me. I think we share some Iraq stories as well. So it's just an all-around really good episode. I had a chance to listen to this through a few times, and I just love this discussion that I had with Roy. So without further ado, let's jump right into this discussion already in progress.
Shit, the only thing that's changed with me is I got married. That was it.
Well, that's a big change for you, man.
Yeah, considering the fact I never thought I would, but
you're pacing yourself. But you know what? I don't know much about her. Just like I said, other than Facebook stalking, but she seems really awesome, man.
Yeah,
and
she's great. She keeps me
Yeah.
grounded. That's
Yeah.
that's the most important thing, because
Oh shit.
after a couple years on me, I started getting a little wild. So, but I knew I was going to marry her from the minute I laid eyes on her. She was
So
she,
did you?
she was dating some D bag at the time too. She denies that she was dating him though.
She did not. Did you know her when we deployed, or did you met her after we got back?
I met her after my second deployment when I started recruiting.
Oh, okay.
I actually started recruiting in Ohio, which that's where I'm from,
Yeah.
and I'm from Canton, and I got stationed in Dayton, which is about 3 hours southwest of here. I was home one weekend, and I was at the bar with a couple of my buddies, and my buddy, one of my best friends from high school and everything, was dating her cousin at the time, and Misty walks in with her D bag, and Ian introduced us to each other, and I was smitten from then on.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
that was in 2009. We started
Yep.
dating that same year, and then 2011 we got married.
Wow.
Yeah, I met her like February, started dating in May, and then I proposed on her birthday in October of that, all in that same year.
Damn. You weren't fucking around, man.
Not at all. Not.
Wow, that's pretty
Plus,
cool.
now she's my retirement plan, because she's a registered nurse. She's got her master's in nursing and education, and in August she's going back to school for a nurse practitioner's license.
Nice.
So I'm trying to push her to get her doctorate, but she doesn't want to go that far. She says too much politics with that.
Yeah, I bet. But still, you got yourself a little sugar
Oh,
mama,
absolutely.
huh? That's kick ass, man. That's awesome. You got any kids in your future?
Oh, no, none right now.
Yeah.
We kick around the idea of planning a family, but right now we're both of us are too focused on our career.
Yeah.
So, she just turned 29 this past October, so she's still younger. I'm 33, so we still have time.
Oh
If
yeah.
it happens, it happens anytime soon, but it's not nothing that we're jumping to right now.
Yeah, it looks like you guys are just enjoying life, having a good time. I mean, because kids are great, but as soon as you have them, man, life changes.
Yep.
Not for the better or for the worse. It just changes. You know what I mean? It's a different life after that.
Right, right. So eventually we'll have them. We want to have them, but at the moment we're not really planning
Yeah.
anything.
No, that's
We
cool.
like the idea of just getting up and going. We have a dog, so we have to plan around her,
Mm-hmm.
around our dog. But with where we're stationed at now in Pennsylvania, we're only an hour and a half away from home.
Right.
So if something goes on, we can swing over, or her family, who usually watches our dog Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
they'll come and pick her up or whatnot.
Yeah.
But when we were in Maryland, that's a 5.5 hour drive, so it was a little harder.
So what does she think of the whole military lifestyle? And it's probably it's a little bit of a jaded military lifestyle because of the whole duty as a recruiter versus, being, the other, going out to the field and all that other
Yeah,
BS. But
she don't know that type of the Army environment. She knows
yeah,
I wake up, I go to work, I'm home at the latest most nights 6:30, 7 o'clock.
yeah. So you're in the Army, but you got basically a regular job.
Right,
Yeah, you
right.
know what I
It's
mean?
basic bank hours, 9 to 5 job.
Yeah,
I do a little traveling here and there every once in a while, but that's nothing major.
yeah. So what I'm targeting is, if you listen to any of my podcasts, which you have, then you'll know that my target audience is really, it's three. There's really three distinct groups of people that I want to service. I want to service the guys and gals. I say guys, I mean both, but I want to service the men and women that are interested in joining the military. So the pre-military folks, right?
Mhm.
The high school kids, the same demographic that you're targeting, 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Right.
And then my second one is the folks that are in, whether it's active duty or reserves or whatever, but the people that are currently serving, and then the people that are out of the military and are seeking entrepreneurship, some type of maybe in a job or in a career or maybe even looking for a job. So my specialty is really in like career development, resumes, cover letters, interviews, skill sets, things like that.
Right.
And that's what my focus is. And I've gotten a lot of information from veterans that have transitioned, and even some folks that are working on transitioning out of the military. But the one demographic that I'm missing the most is the first one, and that's the folks that are looking to join.
Right.
And what I wanted to do is use the podcast as a platform to record some evergreen content, well, as evergreen as you can make it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
In terms of, you can listen to it a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, and it still be relevant for the most part. But I wanted to come up or create like a series of podcast episodes that target the high school student that are kicking around the idea of what it would be like, or possibly maybe they've made the decision they're going to do it, and maybe they went to MEPS and they raised the right hand, but they still got a year, right, or whatever before they actually go. What can they do to prepare, get ready to go off to be part of the military?
Right.
And I don't know if you guys have, like, when you sign somebody up, let's say they sign up as a junior in high school, they've got a year before they actually go off to boot camp or whatever. Do you guys meet or have them meet like on a weekly basis to go over like
Yeah, we actually do. We with where my office is that I'm currently at, we have it twice a week because of our area being so big.
okay,
But every week, every Wednesday and Thursday, I have what we call a future soldier leader, and then
okay,
his main priority is once he or she enlists, they link up with my future soldier leader, and then he's basically their squad leader,
okay,
their first point of contact in their NCO support channel. And every week he goes over. We do PT, whether it's some type of sports activity. He's really big in kickboxing, so he tries to integrate that type of cardio type workout with them.
mm-hmm,
And then the new Army PT program, PRT, which who depending on who you talk to depends on if it's a relevant program or not. Me personally,
mm-hmm,
I think it's just a little asinine because it's more stretching than really anything. Um,
okay,
but and then they'll do that for half hour to an hour, and then he goes into the pre-basic training task list classes, which is anything from map reading, land nav, first aid, military time, sexual harassment,
mm,
uh, any broad scale that you can think of that we teach. They get taught in basic training, which for the most part the curriculum is the same as even when me and you went through, especially
mm-hmm,
with them going back to they're transitioning back to a more harder basic than what it has been because of the wars coming to an end and everything like that.
yep,
But it's every week, and we hold the future soldier accountable of maintaining that accountability of showing up, because all it is, when I joined many moons ago, we didn't have that. I met my recruiter, I joined the
mm-hmm,
Army, and then if I wanted to talk to my recruiter or something, or anything I needed, I had to go to the office to see if he was even there.
mm-hmm.
There was one time when I walked into my recruiter, he's like, "Oh, you should have talked to me yesterday. My Sergeant so and so took all the enlistees over to do paintball."
Oh, really?
I'm like, "Dude, you could have called me." But yeah, and that's the thing, that the atmosphere of how recruiting is operated now compared to when I joined back in 2002 is completely different, because
mm-hmm,
we are accountable for these future soldiers, and I like it because since I have been away from quote unquote the conventional Army for almost 8 years, I haven't dealt with privates and specialists and
mm,
stuff like that. All the guys that I work with are NCOs, E5 or higher.
right,
So I utilize that time to train these soldiers as they were my private or my soldiers when I was a young NCO.
mm-hmm,
So, and it gives me a chance to take my knowledge of what I've learned at that time of being a young soldier, that I've gained from you and Malt and the other NCOs that I've encountered with, and I get to push that onto them before they walk out to the door and they hit the ground running with basic.
so how many NCOs do you got working at your station?
At this center, I have a total of 5. This is the smallest I've had. My office in Maryland, I had 10.
Mm.
But the difference is the Army, with how recruiting works for the Army, is you're either, hey, voluntold, which is DA select, or you can put in a
Mm-hmm.
recruiting pack. And everybody in my office now, they were, hey, the Army said you're going to be a recruiter for the next 3 years. And then after 15 months, if you feel that you're doing successful and your leadership sees that you're being successful at the job, they're going to talk. You're going to sit down and have a conversation. Hey, do you want to reclassify to MOS 79 Romeo full-time recruiter? And then
Mm.
if they decide to do that, they'll go through the steps that are needed for that to happen. Now,
Mm-hmm.
out of the 5 that are in my office, 4 of them are 79 Romeos.
Mm.
And then I have a infantry staff sergeant.
So in your experience, have you noticed a huge separation between the voluntold and those that put in a packet and specifically wanted to do this?
Um, my experience, I've dealt with more of the Army told me.
Mm-hmm.
I've maybe met in my time in recruiting maybe a handful of people that said I actually put in a volunteer pack.
So people just kind of they go there mandatory and then they just realize that it's something that they can actually sink their teeth into and that they're actually good at it, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the way it happened with me, because I was in Iraq when I came down on orders for recruiting detail.
And you were happy, right?
Oh, well, no, I had to finish out my tour. And it was a 15-month tour. And the crazy thing about it is when we were over there, me and Sartor were roommates and everything. And we were 182 at that time, stood up a maneuver element. So we kind of like, it was the modern day BRT at that time, how
Okay.
I looked at it. But they took fisters from 2.5, which me and Kevin were part of 2.5. They reestablished and rebuilt Colt, and then they brought tankers and 13 Bravos together, and we built this big maneuver element from the ground up. And we got deployed, and we were attached to 1-7 Gary Owen.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, a lot of us young sergeants were getting promoted to staff sergeant. And after a while, you saw people coming down on orders for drill sergeant, and it looked like every staff sergeant that was in our troop, because once we got back, the troop was going to get disbanded.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the staff sergeants, include Sartor, came down on drill sergeant orders. So I'm like, well, hell, where are mine? I thought
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting that. So I had a few hours of downtime one time. I went into the computer lab and jumped on the computer and opened up my AKO, and boom, you're on an assignment for the Army recruiting and retention course at Fort Jackson on this day. And
Mm-hmm.
the Army said, hey, you're going to be a recruiter for 3 years. Now, my experience with my recruiter when I joined was bad. 13 Fox is not what I thought what it was,
No.
kind of like the video that I was telling you about today. But my mentality of it, he didn't sell me on being a firefighter like Seidel. He thought he was going to be
Uh-huh.
a firefighter. Me,
Yeah.
that wasn't my intuition, or not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be behind a desk because I wanted to study business, because I
Yeah.
studied business in high school. I was good at it, and I wanted to go to college for it. So I was like, I need something in a computer environment, blah blah blah. Oh, you want to be a 13 Fox? You guys deal with computers. You'll have fun. It'll be great. Sign me up. So dealing with that, and then I get to basic training. Oh, you're in a combat MOS. I'm like, shit. That's not not exactly what I signed up for at all. But and we'll get into that story a little bit later. But I lost my train of thought. Recruiting. Oh, but when I came down on orders, I was pumped for it. I was like, it's something different. Blah blah blah. We get back to Fort Hood, and then it really sunk in. It was like, man, I'm not going to be away. I'm not going to be doing my job for 3 years.
Mm.
So I went to the briefing for a declination statement, and I had got all the paperwork. I had everything filled out. I had it signed. All I had to do was turn it in.
Mm-hmm.
And it really bugged me. I talked to my friends that weren't in their prior service, but I met them while I was at Fort Hood, and they're saying just do it and come back. And then I talked to Sergeant Malt, and he was a mentor of mine, as you were a mentor of mine, but you had decided to get out of the Army. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to him, and he's like, Roy, it's 3 years. Do it, and then that you're done with it, and you don't have to worry about getting out if you sign that paper or turn in the
Mm-hmm.
paperwork. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. and I went to the recruiting school on July 5th or 6th, and then I graduated at the end of August. And got to Dayton, Ohio for my first recruiting assignment, and I fell in love with it.
Mm.
And
So, so what was it about, what was it about the job? Was it the stability? Was it the fact that you got to move closer, basically back home?
well,
What?
it wasn't actually, it wasn't any of that, because the stability and everything, when I first got out to recruiting, it was rough,
Mm.
because one, I'm learning a brand new job, trying to quote unquote sell the army, and
Yeah.
but it wasn't a 9 to 5 job then. It was,
Mm.
I come to work at 8:30 and you're there until complete.
Mm.
So there would be times that I wouldn't get home until 9, 10 o'clock at night. There was one time I had people up at MEPS to join the army, which was an hour and a half away. I didn't get home and into my house to have dinner until 1:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
So it was, you have an objective, you're not going home until you meet those objectives. So
Mhm.
that means all day long I am out at my high schools doing my thing, trying to find people to join the army, out in the community trying to talk to as many people as I can, and then I get back to the office around 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and then I'm on the telephone
Mhm.
calling till I make my 2, 3 appointments that I have to make. And then in the meantime, still have to conduct the appointments that I've previously made and everything like that. So
Right.
it
Right.
wasn't, at that time, it wasn't a whole lot of stability. And I was still single. I wasn't with Misty at the time. So it was okay. I was a bachelor. I lived by myself. So it didn't really bother me that much.
Mhm.
But what really turned me on to the job was knowing from my experience as a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, and especially where I was at, because I was in downtown Dayton, which is crime, drugs, all that stuff. And
Mhm.
me, where I'm from, I grew up in a small town. Drugs were prevalent and noticeable, but it wasn't a big issue.
Mhm.
But I got arrested when I was 17. I don't even know if you know this.
No, I
Uh,
don't.
yeah, I when I was 17, I had a drug related DUI,
Hmm.
and I basically, when I went to court, this was Memorial Day weekend, and when I got arrested, I was 17. I was supposed to be at my mom's house because my parents are divorced, and my dad and my stepmom, they went camping for the weekend. So they're thinking I'm at my mom's just having a good old time. Well, I told my mom that, hey, it's so and so's birthday. I'm gonna be staying home and not coming over to your house. And instead, I went to my buddy's house, went to a party all weekend. Bad decision after bad decision. We got into the car, and uh, cop got us and got arrested.
Wow.
And I didn't tell my parents at all. I didn't
That's a
tell
good
anybody.
That's a good idea.
They my the when the cops got me into the police station, they asked me if there was a if I could reach my parents. I was like, they're out of town, they're camping, they don't have a phone. And this is before cell phones were big and everything like that. Kid I was with, they let his parents take me home, and I was like, oh, I'm free and clear. And then 2 months later in July, I got my summons in court while I was at work, and me and my dad worked together. Um,
Oh.
and my stepmom calls my dad at work asking about this summons that I got. And yeah, it was a bad day at work. So it was about 2.5 months later that they found out about it. And then I went to court in August, a week before my senior year of school.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't say they slapped me on the wrist, but it kind of was. I had to pay a small fine. I had to go be evaluated to see if I was abusing drugs or anything like that, which I wasn't. I smoked marijuana maybe a handful of times. And I was upfront and honest with the lady that evaluated me. And she's like, well, I don't think you're addicted or have that type of personality that it's a huge problem, but I do want to have a drug screening. So I had to do
Mhm.
every Saturday, I had to go in and do a drug screening for a month. Lost my license for 9 months, which is my entire senior year of high school. And
Nice.
that was it. But
Wow.
I took that and I learned my lesson from it. Unfortunately, I had to disassociate myself from certain types of friends that I had at that time. But it was a wake up call, and you
Mhm.
don't realize how big of a wake up call is when somebody puts handcuffs on you, and it's not in like a playing manner. It's serious.
You mean the handcuffs they weren't furry and
No,
pink?
no, they didn't.
No.
For your,
Oh, damn.
but where I was at in Dayton, I got to take that experience and tell that to people. These
Mm,
kids that are going through the same types of peer pressures and everything that I went through, and them realizing there is something outside of this crime infested, drug infested city that I could benefit from.
mhm,
So doing that, talk to them, and they join the army. They ship off to basic training. They come back and they say, Sergeant Milbrook, thank you so much.
mm,
That's right there. That's why I love doing what I do.
right.
Is knowing that I've taken this person that was dealt this hand of cards that were basically handed to him because it was that was it, and
Hmm.
he got to trade him in for a different set, and now they're, for the most part, I try to keep up with as many people as I can,
Yeah.
but knowing that they've
So
prospered from it.
So it's like, you took a situation, right? The Army, hands you down some orders and says you're going to go be a recruiter for 3 years, whether you like it or not. Not happy about it. Lot to do in part with the way that your experience was coming in the Army. And so now you're a recruiter and you've got a mission, a task that the Army has handed down to you, and that is some type of X percent, over a course period of time, whether it's, 10, whatever it is, right? 10 enlistments a month or whatever. So that's the ultimate objective. That's the ultimate goal. That's what you have to do to be quote unquote successful. But what you did, and what I'm hearing is you took something that the Army said, here is a way by which we're going to measure your success. And you said, you know what? Instead of my job being putting numbers on the board or tick marks on the wall, I'm going to give people an opportunity to have a better life, to have an opportunity to remove themselves from a lot of these situations that they find themselves in. In a lot of cases, kids grow up in a neighborhood. I mean, they weren't asked to be born there. They weren't asked to be born into, to poverty, into violent homes, and they weren't, you know what I mean. And they weren't asked to for a lot of these things. And as well as I do, and I'm there too, right? At that age, you make poor decisions. You're sucked into peer pressures. You do things you probably wouldn't otherwise do if you were given a different set of external surroundings or circumstances. So you took something that the Army pegged as your mission, and you turned that around, and you made your mission opening the doors of opportunity to those that maybe didn't even know that there was a different path or a different way to go.
Right.
And not only that, but you made it your personal, you know, uh, endeavor to not only provide this for them, but to stay in touch with them, to follow up with them, and to basically collect kind of their after action review when they get back, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's one thing that, because I got lied to by my recruiter, that was the biggest thing that turned me off about being a recruiter. Is like, I shouldn't have to lie about a product knowing that it's going to be better than what they currently have.
Right.
So I refuse. And to this day, I've been in recruiting for 7 years and 3 months, and to this day, I haven't lied to a single person. I refuse to do it because, one, anything that we say it's too researchable, and it discredits yourself when you lie to these people that are coming to you for guidance, information, anything. And
Mm-hmm.
then two, best best way of advertisement is word of mouth. So
Sure.
if I lie to this person and they get to basic training and AIT, they get to their first duty assignment and they were like, this is nothing what Sergeant Milbrook said it was going to be like, and they have a friend that wants to join the Army, are they going to send them to me? Absolutely not.
Right.
So
Well,
I discourage that. And another thing that was, it's changed anymore from when I first started recruiting. I don't look at these people as numbers. They're people.
mm-hmm.
They're not a one or a two. They're people.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that are kids in high school. They're graduates. They have kids. They have families that are trying to better themselves to put food on the table for their families or for
Right.
themselves. So they're not a number. And there are still some recruiters out there that would consider that, hey, it's all about the numbers. No, it's about making sure we're doing right by that person,
Yeah,
and getting what they want.
and it's not, I mean, and it goes beyond, I mean, I totally agree. It's not numbers, it's their people, and they matter. And on top of that, I was a non-commissioned officer that took soldiers to combat. You were a non-commissioned officer that took soldiers to combat. So you know what it's like to be that line NCO that has new guys coming right out of basic and AIT hitting your squad or hitting your team. The last thing you want is somebody on your team that's bitter because they were lied to, because they were told one thing, promised one thing, and what they were handed or what they were left with is something that they totally didn't expect.
Right.
I mean, now you got this. Now you, as the recruiter, have put this bitter individual, this bitter Joe, in the hands of an NCO that's trying to prepare their team to go to war. And you've been there, and so you understand the severity and the impact that could have down the line as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's actually a good segue. Because that what you just said was basically how I was. I was that bitter, I didn't want to be here, that type of thing. But I don't know if you remember or not, but a conversation that you had with me when I was just a E2 private, and we were out in the field. And this conversation is what basically turned me around as far as my view and my outlook into the Army. And because at that point I didn't plan on making a career out of this. I planned on doing my 4 years and getting out, because all I wanted with money was the Army for was money for college.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of my experience with my recruiter and finding out what my actual job entailed and everything. I didn't want to be there. I hated being at Fort Hood. I hated being away from my family, and I hated not doing what I wanted to do in the Army. And it wasn't a combat job. I didn't want to be in taking bullets for people,
Yeah.
But we were out in a field problem, and I don't know. I know Anthony was on our truck. It was me, you, and Anthony on our truck, and we were out on a mission, and it was just a field problem. But we were going over some bumpy terrain, and our brakes went completely out, and we had Fowler come out with his wrecker, come pick up the truck, and it got deadline. So me, you, and Anthony, we got blessed off to go back to the rear, and our field
Mm.
problem was done. And then probably maybe an hour of us being back in the rear, me and you get called back out to go work at the talk.
Yep.
And we basically, me and you drove. It was Sergeant Mancha. He was still there. So I don't even know who the platoon leader was at that time. It wasn't Han. I know
I
that.
think it was Forrester.
It might have been.
Okay.
But we get called back to go work at the talk, and as soon as we get out there, I get put on KP. So
Oh yeah, I remember that. I
so
remember that.
it was Colonel Abrams' first field problem as brigade commander too.
Oh
and
wow.
and so I go do my KP detail. I come back, you and doing your thing, and what I don't know what struck up the conversation or whatever, but me and you just started talking, and I had only been on your team for a few months, because I started off on Fondren's team,
Mm-hmm.
and then you pulled me and Thompson over, and then all his stuff happened. And I think that's why we might have had Anthony. And,
Yep.
and anyway, I think we were talking about why I joined the Army and everything. And you said, and I told you exactly how I felt. I didn't want to be there, blah, blah, blah. And you said, Milbro, you signed up for 4 years. You can't quit. You can't just up and quit and go away. And it's not a regular job. So you can sit here, be sorry for yourself, and be a shitbag for 4 years, or you can actually learn something, learn your job, be successful, and then you can either get out at 4 years or you can stay in. And I took that to heart, and that moment was when I turned myself around and started getting involved in learning my MOS and everything like that. Because with the what type of leader you were and the mentality you had is, I'm the best. Nobody's gonna outperform me in job knowledge or anything like that. And my team is going to be held to the same standard as I have for myself. So I knew if I wanted to stay on that team, I had to come up to that level. And it was that conversation that turned me around. And it's the conversation that I use when I talk to these kids every day. And like I've told you before, there's a picture of me, you, and Herbst in Iraq that is in my office. And I point, if it's that guy right there, that's why I'm still in the Army. So it's.
I know that picture, and I love that picture. And thanks. I mean, that means a lot to me, man. And you know, I've had many guys. I was in the Army for 10 years. I got promoted to very, very quickly. So, you know, I made E5 in 2 years, 5 months. So the majority of my time in the Army, I was as a non-commissioned officer. So I went through a lot of guys. And I think where it changed for me, because I was the same way. I was very, very bitter because I was lied to. I was told I was going to be a firefighter. I mean, it turns out I'm glad I wasn't. But still, I was just, I felt just, I felt jaded. You know what I mean? I felt like I was taken advantage of. And I was just pissed. And I remember it really started for me when I was in basic training. Everybody's there for the same thing. You go through basic training, and everybody eats at the same time, sleeps at the same time, showers at the same time. And then when you're done, you go down to formation, right? There's a certain time limit that everybody's got to be down there. And you get down to the breezeway there underneath the Starship there at Fort Sill, and everybody starts to line up in formation. And of course, you line up in the order in which you get there. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I see these guys at the front of the ranks that are basically like, they're out in front. They're leading the march, the platoon to chow to everywhere we had to go. It's like the same 4 or 5 guys that were always up front, and of course, those guys were the ones that made the squad leader, team leader, whatever they call it then. And I was like very envious of them. And I'm like, man, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could have some of that responsibility. And I started to internalize and ask myself, why are they able to do this and not me? I mean, we all came and started this journey at the same time. The drill sergeants don't know them more than me. But I started to figure out, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm standing all the way in the back of this formation. So I'm like, in order to get recognized, I got to get to the front of the formation. So how do I get to the front of the formation? Well, I've got to get down here first. And I'm like, okay, which means that I got to figure out how to brush my teeth faster, take a shower faster, make my bed faster, all these things I had to, and I started to work at it because I wanted to be one of the best. Right. Because I never was one of the best. I barely graduated high school. I'm sorry about the dogs in the background, but so I barely graduated high school. Like I never saw myself as amounting to anything. I never really found any successes in high school, and I just always felt like I was failing at everything. And I didn't have an opportunity to go to college or anything like that. This was basically it. This was my life. And so I figured I wanted to hold on a second. Hey! Shut up! Okay.
Keep that part in the interview.
So I was like, I wanted to be the best, and I wanted the Army to be that catalyst that, even though I was jaded and felt, I was pissed. I was like, whatever. Screw it. I'm gonna do what I can to be the best. And so I started to figure out, and I started to watch what other people were doing, and started to emulate that, right? And that was really kind of the start of my quest to be the best at whatever I tried to do. And so I realized to be a squad leader, I had to get to the front of the formation. To get to the front of the formation, I had to get down there first. Right. To get down there first, I had to get up. I had to get up earlier, because these guys would get up and they just had a way of doing it. It was very efficient. I don't know what it was. Maybe they played sports in high school and I didn't, and they just knew how to do that. So I had to get up earlier, and I had to work at getting down to that formation first so I could be up front of the formation, and that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long before I was then at the front of the formation, and I was then made, team leader and squad leader. And I took that, even though nobody told me about it, it was just something that I realized for myself. And I took that to my duty station. I started to look at the people ahead of me. So if I was a private, I would look at the squared away specialist. If I was a specialist, I would look at the squared away E5s. If I was a sergeant, I would look at squared away staff sergeants, that kind of thing. I would always look at like the next rank or the next position ahead of me.
Right.
And I would ask myself, what is it that the guys that are successful, what is it that they're doing? And I started to emulate myself to try to be like them. So I found mentors in the military, whether I was, hold on. Hey! Hold on, I'm going to go let these fuckers out of their goddamn bathroom. Holy shitballs. So Heather and Tyler just got home. That's why the dogs are going crazy.
Okay.
So, oh God, I want to just strangle them. But we got safety briefings in the Army. No kicking your dog on a 4-day weekend.
Yep.
So, so that's what I kind of started to do, and because I always wanted to be the best, and in order to be the best, you've got to figure out who is the best and figure out why it is that they're the best.
Right.
And I did that very, very well as as an E1, E2, E3, E4. I had squared away uniform, I was on time, all whatever. They teach in the Army never volunteer for anything, but in order to learn and grow and all that you volunteer. So I did. I volunteered and I got stuck with a lot of shitty stuff, but whatever. And then I made my. And so this was kind of a funny story. I was getting ready to go to my E5 board. I was still at 4th Infantry Division at the time, 4th Battalion, 42nd FA, and I was getting ready for my E5 board, and it was the FSNCO, Fire Support Non-Commissioned Officer. I don't know if they still have those today.
I think so. I'm not positive. I've been away from it for so long.
I know. It's like everything just like gets shifted around. And I talk to people that are still in, and they tell me stories about units, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. you might as well be talking about being in the Marine Corps or some crazy shit. I'm like, I don't get it. But so my Fire Support NCO. Now, mind you, the Fire Support NCO is basically the top NCO in front of all of the fire support elements. So that's probably 3-4 platoons worth of 13 Foxes. So it's no joking matter. This guy's pretty far up there, and I'm just this E4. And he's like, so you got your board in 2 days, and I'm like, yep. And he says, tomorrow I want you to bring your Class A's in so I can inspect them. I'm like, Roger, I'm all excited. So I go home that night and I make sure that every single pin on my uniform is just right. You know what I mean? I'm measuring. I got my little ruler out. I got my Army regulation out. I'm measuring everything. It's perfect. And I bring that shit in the morning after PT, and we go to like the kind of like the big office where S1, S2, S3 are located, kind of that type of thing. And there's like kind of like a little conference room over there. Nobody was in there, and nobody was going to use it that day. And so he comes in there and he says, all right, looks good. He says, I want you to take off every pin off your Class A and let me know when you're done. And I kind of looked at him funny, like I just spent like 4 hours last night putting all this shit on. And I just like, Roger, just pissed. So I take everything off. And he comes back in and I had, I didn't have a lot of ribbons at the time, but I had, the ribbon bars where you slide the ribbons on the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I took the ribbon bar off, but I didn't remove the ribbons. And he was like, why didn't you remove the ribbons off the ribbon bar? He says, I told you to take everything off. And I'm like, oh, Roger. So he leaves. I go get him. I say, yep, I'm all done. He comes back in. He goes, all right. He goes, I want you to put everything back on your Class A's. And I had my ruler and my reg there, and he says, come get me when you're done. I'm like, okay. So I put everything on. I go get him. He comes in, and he goes, yep, looks good. He goes, what's the most important, out of everything you got on, your patches, your ribbons, your pins, all of it, out of everything that you see that's attached to that green suit jacket that you have, what's the most important thing on there? And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's a trick question, right? I'm like, it's got to be my rank. So I'm like, yeah, it's my specialist rank sewn on my sleeves. And he goes, nope, wrong answer. Go take everything off and let me know when you're done.
Oh, shit.
So I took everything. I don't think I've ever told you this story.
No.
Yeah, so I took everything off. I go get him. He comes in, and he says, all right, put everything back on. So I put everything back on. He comes back in. And he says, now what's the most important thing on your uniform? And I'm looking and I'm like, okay, it's definitely not my rank. And I'm like, oh, it's got to be the unit insignia right on the shoulder board or on the shoulders. I'm like, it's the unit insignia. And he goes, wrong answer. Take everything off. I'm like, Roger. So I take everything off. By this time, I don't have to measure anymore because all the holes are already like embedded right perfectly.
Right.
So and in the back of my head, I'm thinking what of all the positives. So the positive is I'm gonna be able to put my shit on, you know, for the rest of my life without ever having to use a ruler again. So I put everything on there. He comes back in. I know this is a long story, but the more I draw this out, the more effect it has. Trust me.
Absolutely.
So he comes back in. He goes, "What's the most important thing?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, it's got to be the field artillery. The little emblem there. You got the U.S. on one side, the little discs and shit."
Right.
I'm like, "Oh, it's the field artillery. That's our branch insignia." He goes, "Nope, wrong answer. Take everything off." I'm like, "Son of a bitch." So we go through, and literally, I am there all freaking day, all day. He didn't even let me break to go get lunch. I literally was there from right after PT, all the way. I think they had, 5 o'clock formation was already come and gone. I totally thought that as soon as 5 o'clock came around, like, he was gonna just have me pack my shit up and walk. And the whole time he's not explaining anything to me. Like he's not mad or angry. He's just, and I'm thinking at 5 o'clock we'll have formation and I'll go. Nope, sure shit. He stayed there, man. And I finally got out a piece of paper and I was writing down everything that I'd mentioned so I wouldn't mention it twice. And when it was all said and done, the last thing that I could possibly think of was my nameplate. And finally I'm like, he says, "What's the most important thing on your uniform?" And I said, "The only thing I got left is my nameplate." And he goes, "You're right." And I'm like, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And he was like, "It doesn't matter your rank. It doesn't matter your awards. It doesn't matter your unit. It doesn't matter what you've done. The only thing that matters at the end of the day is your name. What have you done for yourself? What kind of name have you made for yourself? Because you'll go through your life, whether it's progress through the military, when you get out, everything will go away. And the only thing you're still left with is your name." And I was just like, holy shit. That's just, I mean, he
That's
could have just,
powerful, man.
he could have just told me that like at 9:30, after the first go around, but it would not have meant as much
Right.
as spending 8 hours going through that exercise. And trust me, I hated his guts for 8 hours until the very end when basically the punchline was that. I think it was the very next day was my promotion board. And he was my sponsor. He actually took me to the promotion board. Even though my team chief, it was supposed to be my team chief's job to take me. And if not my team chief, then my squad leader. If not my squad leader, my platoon sergeant. If not, you know what I mean?
Right.
So this dude is like above him, and so he took me as my sponsor, and I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. So, he took me in, and I tell you, I've been to plenty like Soldier of the Month boards and things like that beforehand, so I was familiar with boards. But when I walked in there after that exercise the day before, everything just kind of really clicked for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I finally I passed the board. Obviously, I made my E5, and so now I'm the squared away E4, or I'm the squared away sergeant. And before this, all I had to do was take care of myself, and I was the most squared away, right?
Right.
I was the best at my job. I was the most squared away in my uniform. Like I was good. Now I'm an E5, and all of a sudden I get like Joes, and all of a sudden like my Joes would screw up, and I would like be getting called in the first sergeant's office and like toeing the line, getting my ass chewed. And I was pissed. I'm like, I didn't do it. Like my guy did it. My guy was the one that got caught with a DUI last night. It wasn't me.
Right.
And it took a long, long time for me to finally realize that once you make non-commissioned officer, it's really no longer about you anymore. Your nameplate that you have on your uniform now also have the names of the guys that report below you and report
Absolutely.
beneath you. And that finally sunk in, and I realized that in order for me to be successful, or my level of success was predicated on the success of my guys.
Right.
And so it was that point forward that I made it my task to focus all of my attention in making my guys the best they could be, because if my guys were the best, I default would end up being the best. And that was the approach that I took through my 10 years in the Army.
And it's very true. And that's how I became successful, and Herbst, even though he got out and went to the National Guard, he was successful. He got promoted to sergeant. So he had soldiers, that he took into combat, and your leadership, because even though Sergeant Malt was our platoon sergeant, everybody pretty much knew that you ran the show. And especially when Sergeant Mancha was our platoon sergeant before Sergeant Malt got there, and your leadership and everything, which is funny because I know you so well and Herbst got to know you so well. Not a lot of the fisters in the battalion in HSB
No,
were a big fan of
no, I know.
Staff Sergeant Lazary.
I know.
But I think me and Herbst had the benefit of having that constant direct contact with you and getting to know you, not so much on a personal level, but understanding where you were coming from as a leader, that made us strive to be more successful in everything as well, which ultimately I think boils down to the success for all the soldiers, to include the non-commissioned officers that we had in the Colt platoon. We've got, there's still a handful of I went through the numbers out of what I could think of. There's like maybe 4 or 5 of us that are still that were in that in Colt that are still in, and everybody's progressed into some type of really high leadership role. Me, I'm a
Hmm.
sergeant first class, finally getting looked at for master sergeant / first sergeant. Awesome. But you got to look at the accreditations from the leadership that was inside the Colt platoon, which started with you and then went to Patton and Fondren and Thomas. Thomas is now a warrant officer. I believe he's still in.
Hmm.
Clark is a captain now.
Yeah.
Sartor, he just took over his first command in the National Guard as a second lieutenant. So I think the the type of leadership style that you had, and not everybody in the Colt platoon, not all the sergeants in the Colt platoon had the same type of leadership, but you were leader first, making sure your guys were taken care of, and then anything else extra, yeah, that was a plus. But you were mission focused to making sure that we were combat ready, and that was the most important thing that I gathered from just observing and everything, and that I've taken away from that as far as my leadership style as well.
Hmm.
That something similar to that story that you just said was something similar that you did for us when we were getting ready to deploy. We had to do a TA-50 layout, and what sparked it was, I'm going to go up and check everybody's Kevlar to make sure their 550 cord is around their name band around their Kevlar.
Hmm.
Well, you come upstairs and you catch me and a couple other soldiers putting our Kevlars together. You're like, stop. This time in the day room, everybody laid out, and we laid out. We weren't dressed. I'll be back at this time. And then you found another discrepancy. I'll be back at this time. And this lasted, but it made it sink in that it's we've got to be consistent with one another. We've got to know what everybody's got with them at all times. So if something happens to where we need to get into their bag or they have to get into ours, they know that stuff's in there. And
Hmm.
it was, that was one thing that when we were deploying for my second time over, that me and Sergeant Rudy and Sergeant Sartor and all of us were doing the same thing with our guys, making sure
Hmm.
consistency, like barracks inspections and everything like that. A lot of guys, they hated it, but deployed, you're in a small confined space sharing,
Hmm.
so and it's smaller than the barracks room that you had at Fort Hood. So
Yeah.
we would go in and we do the barracks inspections. Okay, you have until lunch to get this fixed. It's not fixed. You have until COB formation, get it fixed. It's not fixed. Okay, take everything out of your room. and
Mm-hmm.
take the scrub brush, clean it down. I did that on a handful of times before my second deployment and then after it was done, I gathered everybody around and be like, hey, this is why we have to do this. You're going to
Yep.
be in a space so much smaller than this. You don't want mold growing on your cabinet or underneath your bed. It's disgusting. You're breathing that stuff in. It could make you sick. Could end up killing you. You don't want that. So it's those types of things that you've experienced that you portrayed down to us, we utilized when we had our own soldiers as well, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
going back to what you were saying about it's not about you no more. Once you pin on the stripes of sergeant,
Yep.
you're either a sergeant or stripe holder, and
That's right.
I'm a firm believer of that. It's either one or the other. You're either gonna take care of yourself and say screw everybody else, or you're gonna find that balance where you're taking care of your soldiers, and when you have time, you take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I utilize. Like with my intent with my recruiting centers is their families are the number one priority over
Mm-hmm.
anything else. Your families come first over anything. So if you have a birthday or an event that your kid has to go to and you want to be a part of it, you let me know. You're getting that time off. You're going.
Mm-hmm.
Then yourself. Then you take care of yourself. And then finally the
Right.
mission, because the mission is nonstop. It doesn't stop.
Right.
We have to put people in the Army every single day. It's 365.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not stop. So why would I take your time and your family's time to make something that's not going to stop? It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So I don't know if it all coincide together, but that's where I had that rant that I had to get out.
Yeah. I mean, it pays for itself, right? Because if the NCOs that work for you, um, they got a goal, they've got a mission, they've got to get people in the Army. But if their mind is, on that event that they had to miss, or something happens that they couldn't attend it, or you know what I mean.
Right.
So if their mind is somewhere else, their mind isn't where it needs to be, and that is focused and motivated in their task at hand, and that's getting guys in the. It's a mission. It's no different than being deployed or in combat. You've got a mission, and you've got to make sure that things are taken care of back home, so your guys can focus their full attention on the task at hand, and being able to provide the ability to know if something comes up, they can take that time. So when they are at work, then their minds are at work.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's gonna yield more. They're gonna be more motivated. They're gonna have a different, because everybody has bad days, but the days that you're feeling good, you're feeling motivated, just the tone of your voice is different. And when you're talking to somebody and you're essentially selling, right? You're salesmen. You really are. You're selling the Army to people and convincing them that this is a good decision to make for their life, right? It's not like trying to sell something and get $100 out of their wallet. You're saying, I'm trying to sell you something where you sign on the dotted line and you no longer own yourself, right?
Right.
That's
Exactly.
That's a huge sale, man.
Yep. And do you think would you sign up for the Army if you were talking to somebody like Ben Nye, or is that his name? Ben Stein.
Oh, right.
The
Yeah.
monotone Bueller guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And so, which kind of brings me all the way back around to your guys, and what I really want to do for the podcast audience, is I want this to be a resource, because podcasts, once they're loaded, they're live, they live on the air forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I want this to be a resource, a valuable resource for you and for your guys, and perhaps for other recruiting stations, maybe even around the United States. But I would like to get, maybe you and I can strategize and kind of come up with a plan if this is something you're down for. All right, folks, tune in next week when Sergeant Roy Milbrow and I complete our discussion in episode 21 of Change Your POV podcast. This has been a great discussion with Roy thus far. Next week, we're going to get into more of the strategies that he and I are discussing relative to some evergreen content we're going to be creating in the way of podcast episodes to provide some tools for future enlistees in the United States Army. And I look forward to you stopping back by next week and checking that out. And then when you're done, shoot us an email, or you could go on to the show notes page in the comments section and just let us know what your thoughts are on the whole subject. So until next time, I appreciate you, and I wanted to thank Roy for coming on and agreeing to do this and getting a chance to hear his story. So thanks, I appreciate it. You can find all of the show notes for this episode at changeyourpov.com/episode 19. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I will love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.